Thanks again so much for choosing to join my session. I titled my presentation, Silly Kids, Games Are for Adults, Engaging with Adult Learners. And, a lot of, I don't know if maybe you don't, I feel this way at least, that a lot of educational materials and things like that within the education space, especially related to games, tends to be more geared toward kids, but hey, why can't we have fun as adults? And so that was kind of the theme as to what inspired me to put together this presentation. And as Lauren mentioned in the chat, feel free to type your questions. You can come off mute. This is definitely, I'm happy to engage with you throughout today's session. So let's see. Okay, so a little bit of an overview. If you can't already tell, I wanted to tie in a kind of a fun theme, if you will, based on video games and using game manuals to guide us through today's presentation. Don't worry, the fun slides are just for kind of the beginning. I have more readable slides later on as I start to talk about theory and things like that. So it'll look professional soon. But today our quest objectives are to, really talk through like what are the characteristics of adult learners and how can we align that into game-based learning? Thinking about ways to transfer learning from the classroom into the real world. And then learning about hopefully I can share with you some tools that maybe you haven't heard of, or if you have, encouraging new ways to think about exploring them into your own classroom and ways that you can use them in your own profession. And then finally, we're going to do a few activities to just kind of experience and debrief on what that can look like. So before we get started, my name is Andrea Alvarado. By day, I work as a senior research administrator in the School of Medicine for the departments of neurology and neurosurgery. At night, I am a third-year PhD student at the University of Houston. I am in the Department of Higher Education Leadership and Policy Studies. I do have some favorite games, which kind of inspired, again, the theme today. Feel free to share in the chat kind of what are your favorite video games, or did you, what video game did you get started with and learn if you had that experience growing up, or even now if you still have one now. All right, so why gamify learning? Gamification really kind of increases that motivation, engagement, and retention. And really, as with adults, we're so busy. Many of us have full-time jobs or other obligations. And so when we show up to the classroom, we can be tired, right? And so having a game can kind of be a fun way to break up the monotony of just the traditional classroom. And so it could definitely be a way to kind of introduce new ideas and kind of revive a little bit and have it be a little bit more engaging. And as adults, we really value that relevance and self-direction, right? And gamification provides both of those things. And so it's not just about playing for fun. It's a way to structure the learning to encourage participation and get reflection. And I'm seeing through the chat, that's so exciting. I love everything that y'all are including in there. Definitely Mario for sure. That's awesome. Thanks so much for sharing. Okay, so now we're going to get a little, not to be so serious, but I do want to talk about a little bit about theory and kind of the behind the scenes and things to kind of keep in mind as you're thinking about developing gamifying lessons and things like that. No one really reads the instructions, right? The operating instructions manual, but it's important to know the parameters of your student population. And so in gaming, there's that XP, right? Those experience points. So in a video game, you can earn XP through tasks, defeating enemies, achieving objectives, and it helps grow your character to advance to new levels. And so kind of tying that theme back into kind of our theories, Malcolm Knowles' theory of andragogy, that's going to level up understanding a little bit better about relevance and autonomy. David Kolb's experiential learning cycle, we're going to see how that is going to level up the learning loop. And then finally, we're going to talk a little bit about the importance of providing feedback, and that's going to level up that real-time growth. All right, so level one, andragogy. This is a theory that was proposed by Malcolm Knowles. There were other theorists that kind of came before him, but he was kind of really a researcher in that space. And I really kind of love this quote that he wrote in 1977, which was, adults will enter anything that we offer that is labeled educational in a state of dependency, even though they are completely self-directing in other aspects of their lives. And to me, I feel like that quote really embodies, I really identify with that quote as an adult learner myself, because when we step into the classroom, you're there to learn, right? You're coming in, maybe you feel like you don't know, right? That's why you're taking this course or this professional development or whatever the session may be. But the reality is that you're coming in with so much experience, and we have our own ability to self-direct. And so with that kind of thought, he kind of developed these 6 assumptions. Initially it was 4, and then he later revised to include two more. So we'll go through those now. All right, so Malcolm's 6 assumptions of adult learning. And so the first concept that he kind of introduced was that or the first assumption is that self-concept is self-directed. And this is the idea that, we are autonomous as adults. Adult learners, we are responsible for our own learning, right? It's more of, we are moving away from kind of being more dependent on the teacher and more relying on ourselves. And so a few ways you can kind of incorporate this into your own classroom is going to be creating an adult-friendly environment, right? And also offering those opportunities for self-evaluation, because again, this is us kind of understanding, we know how we learn, and we know what we need to continue to improve. And so that's kind of that assumption. The second assumption is this idea of life experiences as a resource. Malcolm Knowles really went in on that we bring experiences as a main source into the classroom. And so the things that you've lived, the things that you've experienced as an adult, those are resources that you can then bring into the classroom and tie it back into what you are learning, and that there's this richness in what we bring as adults. The third assumption is this idea of readiness to learn. And this is really where you have these developmental tasks, right? So there's this opportunity to coincide your learning experiences with that classroom theory. So for example, if a medical student, getting them experience in the hospital and patients while they're also enrolled in classes. So there's this idea that you can inquire the content as you confront the problems so that you can understand why they're relevant. And then the fourth assumption is the idea of orientation to learning. And so this is really about the need to solve a problem. And that's why you are, as an adult, that's why you are taking classes. For example, I with any professional development, right? Like last quarter, I took a course on Smartsheets because there was something that I wanted to solve. So I was coming in with a real world problem, and I was ready to leave with the ability to apply what I learned today, tomorrow, right? So that's that theory, or that assumption, excuse me. The fifth is this idea of motivation to learn. And it's that it's internal, it's intrinsic, and really what you want to do in the classroom is kind of checking in with the why. Like, why are the students enrolled in your class or in your session? What is their purpose for being there? Because that's going to really hone in on their motivation and to keep them motivated, right? So understanding what brings them to the classroom every day. And then the last is this idea of the need to know. And it's really, why do you need to know this? And it's providing the rationale and context behind what it is that you're teaching them. And it kind of goes back to that application of real world problems. And so just kind of tying back into, you need to know this because this is how it's going to be applicable in the future. Now, Malcolm Knowles wasn't perfect. There are a lot of criticisms about these theories, but the idea is that, a lot of things are kind of intersected, but it can kind of help you begin to think about how, as adult learners, we are different, and everyone is different, right? That it's not this idea that every single student as an adult, we all come in with the same experiences. No, we all have different walks of life. We all have gone through different things, experienced different professions, and we all bring these different experiences into the classroom. And so really it's kind of understanding that as adults, we are on a continuum, and it really depends on where they are in the learning journey. So it's important to kind of, again, go back to checking in into the why they're learning, what's motivating them to come to the classroom, why are they ready to learn, and kind of in all of that space. The second theory that I wanted to talk about was experiential learning cycle. And it's this idea of experiential learning, which was introduced by John Dewey. And he kind of said that, all genuine education comes through experience. And so David Kolb later kind of derived from Dewey and other researchers, and he created what's now known as the experiential learning cycle, and then also the learning style inventory. And the reason this is important to understand is so that you can understand better like learning styles based on abilities for our adult learners. Okay, so I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I do want to kind of point out a few things. So with the experiential learning cycle, the idea is that you have an experience, right? The concrete experience, then you reflect on the experience, and then you learn from it, right? Abstract conceptualization, and then you try out what you learn. And so in the learning cycle, we are kind of going through this iterative process, going through the experience and thinking about it, reflecting, refining, and then trying again, right? So there's this idea of this learning cycle. And then he also introduced these learning styles. And these learning styles, if you notice along the outside, are the same for components of the cycle. And within them, these are kind of the different learning styles. So accommodating kind of incorporates both that concrete and active experimentation. So someone who's accommodating, they have a preference for being more hands-on and relying on their intuition. Someone who's diverging has preference for concrete feeling and reflective observation, and they are both hands-on, but then they also like to reflect. Assimilation, they have a preference for both the abstract and reflective, so they like to kind of watch and think before they act. And then finally, converging is they draw on both active experimentation and abstract conceptualization. Those are their preferences, and they like to kind of test ideas, use learning to solve problems. And so there's this idea of understanding kind of what's the learning style of your students, of who you're educating, and while also understanding how it fits within the context of the learning cycle. And then finally, the kind of the level 3, if you will, is understanding and thinking about the feedback principles or performance feedback, right? As adults, how we provide feedback is really important. And with games, feedback can be instant. So, there's kind of these 3 ideas of really assessing the needs and that of the learner, and that's going to be by establishing those clear expectations and criteria so that you can draw back and provide that feedback. The second is going to be understanding that delivery style and really understanding how does the learner prefer to get feedback, right? I'm helping teach a course right now, and one of the things that the very first day of class, our professor, she literally asked every single student, how do you like to get feedback? Do you like to get feedback through group setting, one-on-one, written, in a meeting, and just kind of understanding how each student likes to get that feedback so that she can incorporate as we go through this course, giving them feedback that matches their style so that they can be ready to take it in and then also improve and develop. And then the last is that is this idea of content retention and that feedback loop and it being timely, right? You know, we get so busy and it can be kind of difficult to provide feedback on in a timely manner, and then we might forget kind of what that experience was or why we answered the way that we did. And especially now in this day and age with so much going on, with so many distractions, giving that feedback in a timely manner can be super helpful and important for your learners to develop and engage, be engaged. And then finally, oh, sorry, I didn't realize I still had my pointer on. This idea of so connecting the theory to practice, right? So really it's thinking about all of those experiences, right? That kind of ties into this idea of gameplay, feedback, right? That can be those things like scoreboards, points, comments, reflection, giving them the space to reflect on their experiences, right? So that can be something like a post-game discussion, a debrief, and then experimentation. So giving them that space to be creative, play, improve, practice, and kind of just have fun. Gameplay doesn't have to be super complicated. It can just be something as simple as doing a room temperature check. How do you know your students are ready to learn, right? So even just I know, like, putting in the chat, that's not necessarily a game, but doing things like that, maybe with different mediums, can be a way to kind of break up from just someone lecturing to having it be a little bit more interactive. Okay, so we've come to our tutorial. So I wanted to do a word cloud demonstration. Feel free to drop in the chat if you've done a word cloud or if you haven't. And let me go ahead and pop it up on the screen. Okay, so if you, oh good, yay, so everyone's, or we've got a lot of word cloud users. Good. And Mentimeter, nice. Okay, cool. Yes, very cool. So if you want to join, am I still sharing my screen? Yes, okay. And maybe share what your favorite video game is. Oh, yes, I will drop the link in the chat. Absolutely. Thank you. Ooh, okay, Tap Gallery. Kahoot, nice. I've never heard of Tap Gallery. Tetris, classic. Brightspace. Ooh, I'm gonna have to jot some of these down. Cool. Quizlet, yes. I didn't know about all the new features Quizlet has until recently. I was studying for a certification and I was really impressed on how advanced they've gotten. So that's neat. Yay, Zelda, Pac-Man. Super Mario Brothers. Okay, cool. Nonogram. See, this is why I love sharing, because then I learn about all these other really cool tools to use as well. Donkey Kong. Yes, I love Donkey Kong too. Okay. I think I saw Wii Bowling. Yep, nice. Call of Duty. Okay, fun. Oh my gosh, House Party. I forgot about that. That's fun. Family Feud. Okay, cool. Awesome. Wheel of Fortune. Okay, Family Feud. Oh, those I love I mean, it's kind of dorky, but I love using like Family Feud and some of those other games to like turn those into when you're teaching something. So that's really fun. And like Jeopardy too. I think I saw Jeopardy somewhere. Yep. Um, awesome. Price is Right. Nice. Cool. Snake. Oh my gosh. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for participating and humoring me and humoring us. I will see if I can figure out a way to screenshot this and add it into the slide deck and re-upload it so we can all share our resources, or feel free to take a screenshot now. But there's lots of new things to explore. Cool. All right, so let's go back to all right, so let's take a moment to debrief. What did you think? I know some of you had used it before, but feel free to pop in the chat kind of how have you used it in your own practice, or you can come off mute if you feel comfortable. What does it tell us about what motivates adults to get engaged and learn and participate? So like for me, for example, I really love seeing like the words get bigger as more people interact and kind of share the same thoughts or feelings, and kind of it's somewhat building that community, right? Especially when you're online, it can feel like you're not really sure if anybody else feels that way. And obviously the word cloud can kind of show where there are similarities, and then also seeing people start to pop their own thoughts into the chat, and you can start to see the word cloud grow, you know that people are engaging and kind of adding to it. But let's see, Jessica says, brought your own experiences and learning to the room, activated previously learned knowledge. Nice. Thanks so much. Yes, and Jessica, my anonymous commonality, absolutely. I really found that was super helpful during the pandemic when I was doing some online, trying to build community throughout the pandemic. And it was like, at the time I was working with undergraduate students, and no one had their camera on, and it was like, who is out there? Is anyone listening? And using a word cloud, it was like they started to kind of share with each other. They were seeing, oh, other people are saying the same things as me. And then by the end of like the semester, it was like cameras were on and everybody was coming off mute, and it was like it was really great. But it was a nice way to kind of start start building that community. So thank you so much for saying that. And then Jennifer said, I found using Jeopardy and Quizlet to be really helpful in studying. Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, Quizlet has a lot of really advanced features that can kind of make it fun and engaging, and even Jeopardy too. That can be a fun game for whether it's just for fun or tying it into the classroom. So awesome. Thanks y'all. Thanks so much for sharing. All right. So we will continue. Okay, so as we continue thinking about building this idea of gamifying our learning experiences, what are some things, these are some things to kind of keep in mind as you start to, if you want to build your own, or as you're thinking about incorporating a game into whatever lesson it is that you're going to provide. And so the first thing you really want to think about is having that mission, right? Having a clear learning objectives. Those are always going to be super important, because that's what's going to guide your presentation, and then also the game, right? What is the point of, what is the purpose of this game, and why are they engaging in the game? The second thing that you're going to want to think about are those levels and achievements, right? So thinking about what are going to be the rules and the progress indicators that let you know that the student is progressing and understanding the concepts that you're presenting in this gamified environment. The next point is the idea of points, comments, and that input. So thinking about having that embedded embedding that feedback into it, right? So if as we saw with the word cloud, you could see in real time, people were posting responses and what everybody was saying. And so that's kind of a way to get that feedback right away, right? And maybe it's at the end of the session, they're getting points and they can kind of see where they're at. And then finally is this kind of this boss battle, right? So like at the end, after it's all over, having these debriefs and providing that space for reflection with whatever game that you're doing. And so from the game into the real world, you can think about having those, thinking about how do simulated challenges can prepare our learners for those real world scenarios, right? So we can use game-based learning to help foster that experimentation without the risk of being out in the real world per se, right? Being in a game, there's low risk, and you can kind of see and get that feedback, right, of where they are going, whether they are understanding the concepts or not. And then again, encouraging that application through post-game reflection. I'm going to pause real quick. So Alyssa, I will drop at the end, and if someone could remind me, but I'm pretty sure I'll remember, I tried to upload the slides into the portal for the conference, but I may have missed the deadline. So I do have them on Google Drive, and I will drop the link, and it's public, so you can download it from there. And then I'll also go back and add the word cloud and add it as like a final slide for us. But thanks so much for calling that out, because I do want to share them with y'all. Thank you. Okay, so going back to, so 𝗧𝗧𝗧 in 2009, she kind of developed these 6 factors. She does a lot of research around gamifying for adults. And so she developed these 6 factors to engage with games. And the idea there's like kind of these 6 ideas to kind of help you kind of get started. Maybe if you're like not really sure what it is that you want to do. So the first is this idea of completion, right? So maybe it's a game where they are collecting objects or there's levels to complete, right? So that could be one way to develop a game. A second type would be something like a narrative. Where they are following a storyline, discovering what happens next, right? So there's these ideas of where you are maybe depending on whatever the content is, you can develop a story and kind of have your adult learners engaged with that storyline. So something I could think of would be like maybe like developing a simple escape room or something like that, where there's usually like, trivia questions and you have to follow the story to get to the end, right? The third is this idea of creation, where you are maybe building things, ideas, artifacts. If you've played a game like Minecraft, right, you have to gather certain materials like wheat before you can cook and make meals later on, right? So there's these ideas of building things. So maybe there are ways that your own content can be created and developed in that manner. The fourth is this idea of competition. So maybe achieving things better or faster, maybe doing things timed. Definitely Kahoot is one of those games, one of those resources that comes to mind, right? Where you have to answer super fast to get the most points. The next is community. The next idea is community, where there's collaboration, maybe talking with others, definitely opportunities for role play. For example, there's lots of resources online, but I was teaching about IRB, and online I found where someone had put together like this idea of like to explain IRB, you put students in groups, and each person has a different role within the IRB committee, or one is the researcher, one is their advisor, one is the IRB approver, and then you give them, they each have their own kind of like script, and then they kind of engage and see how it all works together. So kind of bringing it to life. And then the last one is this idea of puzzle solving for problem solving, right? Where you can maybe the students can bring the problem into the classroom, and you can create a puzzle to try to figure out what it is that they're trying to solve and kind of help them solve that problem. Okay, so next we've come to some power-ups. And so these are some resources that some of these were mentioned in the word cloud, but these are resources that I've used in the past, and I kind of wanted to share kind of what I use them for, and then also just some general comments. And I think we're going to have a little bit of time, so I can definitely, specifically with the first resource, I can definitely kind of show you. So the first is called 𝗀𝗄 slides, and it's what we did the word cloud in, but you can also do quizzes, you can do polls, you can create content, it integrates with Google Slides and Microsoft PowerPoint, so you can upload if you already have slides and then you want to add to it. A few things to keep in mind. The free version does allow for up to 50 users, but then beyond that, you would need to pay. And they do have like discounts for educators. It's a nice alternative to Kahoot because I think for me, the free version of Kahoot is a lot more limited, but it's not as like audio, things like music and stuff like that in the background. The images that they have available for you to use are not as fancy per se as like Kahoot, but it's a nice alternative and it can get the point across. At least that's what I found. So I'll show you that in a moment. The next is Canva, and I saw that there's a session going on at some point today on like how to use Canva to really optimize it, and so I'm definitely going to try to attend that session. But Canva is, if you don't know what it is, you can make fun marketing tools. So you can do things like flyers, presentations, all sorts of materials, social media, like if you're posting on social media. And the free version allows for a lot of graphics, but there are some graphics that are behind a paywall. So you would, if you want kind of the more advanced graphics, and they also have like branding features where you can kind of put in a color scheme if that's part of your group and or organization or whatever it is. And you can kind of have that be consistent throughout all of your materials, but that's where I got my fun slides for trivia. And they actually have a feature in making this. I didn't know they have some of their slides are like games, so you can like actually play a game in Canva with some of these slides. So there's lots of little fun features sprinkled throughout Canva. Another popular one is Kahoot. It's a game-based learning platform. It's definitely a lot more sophisticated than 𝗀𝗄 slides as far as the game part goes. I think it's a lot more fun. It's a lot more animated. But the downside is that the free version only allows up to 10 users. But it is a great tool if your organization is able to get you a version, and you can definitely you know, like I said, I think it's just more like the graphics are a little bit more fun than 𝗀𝗄. Lauren shared Level Up with Canva. Thank you so much for pointing that out. Thanks, Lauren. Okay, and then next is Padlet. Padlet, it's not necessarily a game tool, but I still wanted to include it because I do think there is something kind of fun about it. And it's a visual collaboration tool. It's kind of an alternative to Google Jamboards, which were officially retired. I kind of recently, I don't really remember exactly when, but it's essentially, it's a good tool for group projects. So if you are presenting materials or if you're working with a group, it's kind of a nice way where everyone can have access and post video or text responses. The only downside to it is that the free version is very limited. Like you can only do 3 boards, I think. And then after that you have to pay, but they do have like discounted versions for educators and professionals. But it is, like I said, it's nice. We used it we're using it in one of my classes this semester, and the way that it was, like, the very first assignment we had to do was we had to record an introductory video of ourselves and then upload it to Padlet, and then we could watch each other's it's an asynchronous course. So we could watch each other's videos and kind of meet everyone in the classroom, and then posting, you're commenting, like, on their videos, and maybe you're saying like hi, or I really enjoyed what you said about X, Y, and Z. And it was a nice way to kind of break the ice and get everybody to get engaged. And honestly, for me, that activity has made this class feel like it's in person. Like, I oftentimes forget it's asynchronous because she has us engaging in so many ways with one another, both whether it's through video or in a group project, or we're commenting on each other's posts. And so again, it's not a game per se, but it's definitely a tool that I think is helpful, and I definitely wanted to kind of call it out and share. And then finally, good old Qualtrics. It's a little bit more sophisticated than Microsoft or Google Forms, but you can also use those as well, right? But you can make surveys, you can use word clouds in there. And so oftentimes, many of us that are at organizations, we have access to Qualtrics through our organization. And so it's a great tool to provide that space for those self-reflections, for providing those surveys, those analysis to kind of call back to the learner what they are experiencing, and then they can also kind of gauge and monitor their own progress through survey analysis, right? So I think what I'm going to do for a second, since I'm a little bit ahead, I'm gonna go ahead and, oops, let's go back. I'm gonna share really quickly just 𝗂𝗄, or I think that's how you pronounce it. But essentially what is nice about it is that they have lots of different integrations, and so you can basically, even with the free version, I did upgrade just for to make sure that I had enough capacity for the number of participants. So I have like the second tier, but in general, the free version is very has a lot of access. And so when you go in to create a presentation, and full disclosure, right now I've kind of lost where the chat went. So if you're putting anything in the chat for right now, I can't see it, but I just wanted to let you know I will get back to it. But anyway, so you can create a new presentation. And so they've got these different options, right? So you can do a quiz by like picking an answer, or having them do a short answer, spin the wheel. So I know, like, a lot of times maybe it's you need to pick someone to present or talk or for a prize. They've got that embedded in here. Matching order, putting things in the correct order, categorizing things. You can also ask polls, which is really nice. We did the word cloud, right? And then again, kind of just creating content in general. And so it's a nice tool and resource that I've been really exploring this last year. And so I wanted to share that with you because, like I said, the free version has a lot of really great features. And I haven't really explored like what added benefits I have now that I'm paying, but it is nice. Let's see. I'll also show you Padlet, because I didn't see that one pop up in the chat. So Padlet is where, like I said, you make kind of a blank form, and then you can just go in and have people start adding content into it. So the only thing for me, at least personally, it has taken me a minute it's not as intuitive for me. That's just for me. I'm a little bit of a slow learner when it comes to some of this newer tech, but you can definitely Oh, wait, what am I doing? Oh, here it is. See. So testing for 𝗿𝗏𝗃 25. And then you can add pictures and things like that, but then as other people start to post, you can see them add their own kind of tabs into the Padlet. And like I said, when you go to upload, you can upload something, you can add a link, you can add a picture, an image. There's these are all the different things that you can upload. So depending on what it is that you're doing, for example, like I said, with my class, we had to upload our own video, or you can link it to Google Drive, things like that. So just some nice features that I wanted to share. But all right, let me see if I can go back to finding the chat. Okay. Are there any other tools that y'all have used? I know, like I said, I know some of y'all posted things in the word clouds. I'll be sure to share those, but if there's anything else, please share with us. This is an opportunity to network and learn from each other. All right, so we've come to the boss level, and I did create a fun game. Unfortunately, I don't have a prize, so I'm so sorry, but hopefully you can kind of have fun playing. So let's see. There we go. Wait, I want to make sure I don't have the sorry. I was testing it earlier and I want to make sure I start on the proper slide. Okay. And I will drop the link in here. Okay, let's see. We've used Twine for Pick a Path. Oh, fun. Okay, cool. Miro and Mural to create virtual whiteboards that allow for virtual versions of board games. Awesome. Thanks so much. Jessica, I'll also copy this and put it, if that's okay with you, and share it in the presentation slides. As links. Okay. Childhood. Lisa said she uses childhood board games in my nursing education classes. Awesome. Yeah, I was reading an article about using board games with adults, and how it's like, so it's nice to keep them engaged and get everybody kind of break up the monotony. So that's awesome, Lisa. Please share more if you want. What games? I'm curious. Thanks so much, Mike. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you so much. Shoots and ladders. Oh, okay, fun. That's awesome. Yeah, it's always fun to kind of, even if you just have a fun game day, right? Like bring a snack and let's just chill for a minute. Like I know that's not on theme with what I was talking about with the adult learning theories, but sometimes it's important. We need breaks too, right? We're all so busy and there's so much, and it's nice to kind of break that up a little bit. All right, so let's see. Elizabeth shared that they're currently developing a training on suicide prevention. I was wondering what would be my advice on making it interactive and engaging while dealing with such a heavy subject. Ooh, let's see. Yeah, that can be tough, right? Because definitely thinking about the content and being respectful is definitely something that's important. Personally, I think when I've worked in kind of some of those crisis, with some of those crisis trainings that I've done before with Specifically, I'm drawing back on like my experience with undergraduates, especially undergraduates that are at risk. We would always kind of talk through like role play. And so maybe having creating some materials that where you could have kind of role play and like how would you respond to to this if someone said this to you, like kind of giving them that script, right? Because those are such serious topics, and making sure that they feel prepared to engage or not engage is so critical and important. So at least I think that's one way that I would definitely look at it. I know at my previous institution, our counseling center, they developed, they had training on it, and I wish I could remember what it was called. Because it was grant funded, and it was like that. We had like a lot of role play where we were kind of like, having those conversations, and then it was like, okay, what I'm saying this to you, how are you going to respond? And so that I found that to be super helpful. So maybe if you have access to a counseling team or a counseling group at your organization, maybe they have resources on developing those, helping with those trainings. I don't know if anybody else wants to kind of hop in the chat and help it out. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Good question. Yeah. Um, all right. Okay, so if we're ready, it's I think it's just 3 questions. But just like Kahoot, the quicker you answer, the more points you get. So I'm gonna start it now. All right. Oh, it's 4 questions. Wait, I think I said that. Yeah. Okay. All right. So question 1, why should you gamify learning? All right. Is it to increase motivation and engagement? Is it to bore students, or to help them get better at video games? Which hopefully everyone's answered already. I would argue that that could be definitely a fun part, right? um, Yay, everyone got it right. Awesome. All right, let's see who's on our leaderboard. Yes, Mike. All right, Nat, Jessica W, Jewel, Melissa, and Anna. Awesome. And see, unlike Kahoot, it shows everyone where you're at, right? All right, so, all right, question 2. Match the researcher with their theory. Let's see if you remember. So who had experiential learning? Who developed andragogy? And who had those factors to engage with games? I kind of tried to trick y'all a little bit. I put them out of order. All right, let's see. All right, so experiential learning cycle was David Kolb, andragogy was Malcolm Knowles, and then the factors was Nicola Whitten. Awesome. Yay, that was kind of a tough one. So, all right, cool. Okay, Jessica is now in the lead. All right, question 3. So this one's going to be categorize games by their type. So which ones fit under adult learning and which ones are just for fun? Hopefully this one was kind of obvious. we didn't talk about all the for fun games, but process of elimination. All right. 3, 2, 1. Yay! Oh my gosh! Yay! Good job, everyone! Yes. So as I shared, 𝗀𝗏 Slides, Canva, Kahoot, those are all really great tools for adult learning. And then, of course, Nintendo, PlayStation, and Xbox are for fun. Although some games, you're developing the what is it, where you're like going back and learning how to you're developing as a gamer too, right? So there's some learning there. All right. All right, Jessica, rocking the longest street. All right, so last question. What is today's date? I wanted to throw something fun in there. Is today Wednesday? Is today Thursday, October 22nd? It's almost Friday. Yay, it's Thursday. Today's Thursday, y'all. All right, so yay, congratulations, Jessica. Good job. Hopefully you had a little bit of fun humoring me with my game. And all right. I did want to go back before I go back to the presentation and call out Alyssa. Thank you so much for commenting on Elizabeth's question. And Alyssa shared that what they've learned with topics like this, like for 𝗀𝗏 active shooter, using scenarios, role playing, and relevant articles and stats. Of course, not every topic is appropriate for gamified learning, but it's possible to make it engaging. So yes, absolutely. Right, kind of being, depending on the content and the topic, we definitely want to find ways. There are ways to make it engaging, right? Okay, so feel free to debrief on the quiz. I was kind of having fun seeing everyone's reactions, and I guess we were kind of going through the chat. But if you have any final thoughts, feel free to share them. But kind of with that, I'll start wrapping up my presentation. So this is our victory screen, our reflection, right? Level complete. So some things for you to kind of reflect on are, what is one game that you can maybe try in your next session, and how can you integrate feedback and retention, kind of just to get those creative juices going. And then, so today we earned some XP, right, to tie back into our theme. And we did that by learning that, games boost motivation and retention. We learned about 𝗏𝗏s, 𝗁𝗏, and performance feedback, and that games really kind of encourage that reflection, experimentation, and that transfer of knowledge. So, oops, oh my gosh, goodness. And like the good grad student that I am, I have posted my references, so I will share those as well, in case you want to dive deeper into the theory. And then finally, thanks so much for playing. So again, with that, if anyone has any final questions, thank y'all so much. Oh my gosh, y'all are making my day. I was so nervous before this. So I really appreciate you engaging and participating and giving me this feedback, because it's really great. So thank you so much. I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of your conference. Feel free to connect with me, whether it's on LinkedIn or here at Stanford. And I hope you have a great rest of your day.